Hello, my name is Joellen Litz. I'm a Lebanon County Commissioner in my 6th term. So that means I'm starting my 23rd year as a County Commissioner. And I've served in a lot of different departments that we have. Those departments range from Farmland Preservation. Veterans Affairs is probably the last one because that's a V. So I'm going to guess we have roughly 40 departments, and each year the commissioners get assigned different departments in order to be the liaison, and you are to become the expert, in quotes, for that department and lobby for what they need. So some time ago I was on the Farmland Preservation Board, so I am familiar. However, recently we had a tragedy here in Lebanon County and we lost one of our commissioners, Commissioner Ames, to COVID. So in the interim, my colleague and I, Commissioner Phillips, have split up Commissioner Ames's duties, and essentially we're doing double duty. One of the programs that I received back that I used to have was the Ag Preservation Program through the Conservation District here in Lebanon County. And I always enjoyed that particular department, and I tell you that both of my grandfathers were farmers, and so I have fond memories going out Sunday afternoons after church and helping my grandpa, whether it was picking cherries from the trees or strawberries from the plants, feeding the chickens, gathering the eggs, all kinds of things. So very fond memories of the farms. And even on my grandpa, who was from West Virginia, Grandpa Harry was here in Lebanon County, and Grandpa Mike was down in West Virginia, and he had chickens and pigs and a cow for milking. They lived way back in the hills of West Virginia, so they didn't have a lot of amenities. We even had to use an outhouse there. But I'm getting off track. I wanted to tell you about farmland preservation here in South Central Pennsylvania, the breadbasket of America. We get that terminology because we have very fertile soil, and that soil produces more crops than most places here in the entire United States. So it's important that we preserve what we can. Unfortunately, that same flat land with the fertile soil over the limestone is desirable for developers, and whether it be large warehouses or housing developments, they like to come here. Our land is a lot cheaper than surrounding counties, but what's going on is something called the Mason-Dixon dilemma, whereby in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, a small, simple home can go for close to $1 million. That's a lot of money. So some of the early retirees in their 50s are saying, oh my, where can we live with a better cost of living, quality of life, and still have access to the lifestyle that we are used to? Well, initially, the Pennsylvania line was absorbing most of the overflow from Baltimore and Washington. So you had Adams, York, Lancaster County beneath us taking most of the pressure. Well, their land has skyrocketed and the development has gone crazy. So they've come across the county line into Lebanon County, and well, we are working very hard to try and preserve as much farmland as we can, because 422 is a bit of a dividing line on both sides of 422, but south of 422 especially is our most fertile soil. To the north, we have more shale, and that shale doesn't have a lot of good topsoil. Still used for crops, but just not as productive. The exception would be along the Swatara Creek, which comes in from Schuylkill County and exits West End, going into Dauphin County. When the floodwaters come up, it carries topsoils from farms upstream, maybe in Schuylkill County, and as the water recedes, it deposits on the banks of the Swatara Creek. So we do get fertile soil there for the farmers to grow crops. So these are the parameters I wanted to set up for you to explain where our most fertile soil is and why it's so important to preserve that land. Now the state has a nice list of preservation reasons as well. And the first one is to grow food for production, which we discussed already as the breadbasket of America. But it also improves our water quality because these open fields and open spaces allow water to recharge the groundwater, and as it does, it filters and goes down to the aquifer, and we have pretty pure water to drink. Next, we have water quantity. If everything is covered over with macadam, the water runs off rather quickly into local streams, which raises their levels and creates more flooding. But also, the quantity of water that we get into the aquifer is less. So we have our water coming from the Swatara Creek mainly for Lebanon Water Authority, American Water Company, which services Annville and Palmyra, and then also on the Swatara Creek is Suez, down around Hummelstown, Middletown area. But the Swatara also is the recipient of water from, I think it's Mill Creek, but up in Schuylkill County there is a reservoir that the Lebanon Water Authority draws from, which is fed by gravity. So the Swatara Creek, they have to pump the water from there. But they're very smart having two sources of drinking water, because if we have a drought, the reservoir goes down and we do need to draw from the Swatara Creek solely at times. And we implement conservation measures, and the water authority is constantly trying to upgrade their pipes. The old leaky pipes are getting replaced so that we can provide water for more and more people. I've spent a lot of time on water quality because I'm also very passionate about clean water. But our heritage, my goodness, fathers, like I said, my grandfather was a farmer. Our heritage of farming and Pennsylvania Dutch country, and I do have a channel for Pennsylvania Dutch cooking. So all of that is part of our heritage. And we mentioned briefly, I got into the stormwater. That stormwater, oh my goodness, it's just horrendous if it comes down in sheets. One of the things that, whether it's a big farmhouse or a warehouse, can learn from our heritage and the farmers that settled the land was they installed cisterns. They have large roofs and they collect that water and reuse it for irrigation, maybe washing cars and whatever. You know, it's a good source of extra water. So even on your home, you can put rain barrels and collect the water and reuse it to water your flower gardens or vegetable gardens. So thinking in good ways of how we can reuse that water and not add to the storm water running into the creeks is a very important source of preserving our farmland. Our reason too. Now, of course, jobs. Farmers can't do the whole thing alone 365 days a year from morning till night. They work so hard. And so they do have to hire outside help. Those farmers provide jobs. I think 2 out of every 5 jobs here in Lebanon County. Now, there are ag-related projects or processes that go on. ASK Foods is all food. We also have Lebanon bologna, which we're famous for, actually. It's a smoked meat, usually a beef, and it comes in sweet, and they've added honey. They've made all kinds of formulas now, but the original was the bologna smoked so that they had meat all winter long. Also, wildlife benefits, sometimes too good. Did you ever see deer grazing in a cornfield? Well, that is a little bit hard on the farmer's crop and takes away from how much he's producing, but he also gets some benefits there. He's allowed to harvest those deer and fill his freezer with meat as well. And of course, our quality of life. We just enjoy so much driving down the road, seeing the open space, seeing the cows in the field, and appreciating what we have here in the Lebanon Valley. We have mountains on the north and mountains on the south end, but in the valley we have all this fertile soil, especially from Route 422 south. So, I told you a lot about why we should preserve farmland. Some of the qualifications that farmers must meet are that they must be in an ASA, that's an ag security area. Each municipality, we do have 26, but Cold Spring does not have a formal government. So 25 municipalities have the opportunity to have ag security areas. Some areas it's not practical. You look at the city of Lebanon or Clayona or Annville or Palmyra proper or even Myerstown. It's not likely for them to have preservation of farms because they're not big enough and most of their land is built out. Richland is one of the few exceptions that actually has some farms preserved that I'm aware of, and that is because the farm straddles the boundary and extends into a neighboring municipality, but the whole farm is preserved, which goes into that particular municipality. So the soils have to be very productive, class 1 through 4, and 50% of the land has to be available for crop or pasture land or grazing. That 50 number is important because you also have to have a minimum of 50 acres to put into preservation. There's an exception to that. If you have 10 acres and you are next to a farm that is preserved, you can apply for preservation because it increases the amount of contiguous land in farming. Those farms try and get, well, they get extra points for being next to another one that's preserved, and the whole goal is to get 500 acres in a conglomerate so that you don't have nuisance complaints. Maybe it's smell or noise. Farmers make smell and noise, but guess what? They were here before the development. So if you build a home next to a farm and you're in the prevailing wind, which means the way the wind normally blows, expect to smell the manure when it's getting moved or spread, and expect to hear some clanking and things going on and some cows bellowing if they're giving birth, whatever. So it can be noisy and it can be a little smelly, and if you're not used to it, well, then you are in for a treat. So we talked about what some of the qualifications for being in the preservation program are. I was the president of the League of Women Voters, I'm going to say around 1990, and we hosted a meeting in the basement of the courthouse whereby we invited the county commissioners and many other people, it was very well attended, to come and learn about farmland preservation. So we had professional presenters come in from the state and the state league as well, the state of Pennsylvania that is. But the 3 commissioners did attend, and sure enough, soon after that, in 1992, they started the Ag Preservation Program. So kudos to them. I was not a commissioner at that time. However, in 1996, I was elected a commissioner, and of course, that was one of my passions from early on. So what we're doing right now is paying $2,549 per acre for a farm to put their farm into preservation. Now it sounds like a lot, but it doesn't sound like enough, but they get to keep the title to the land. They just promise to keep it in preservation, and that follows the title. It gets recorded in the Recorder of Deeds office at the courthouse. But if you break it down, for us taxpayers, that costs us 6 cents a square foot. Now that sounds like a bargain in any time of year for me, because 6 cents a square foot, what can you buy for that? You can buy preservation of farms. Well, in December of 2021, which is last month, we preserved 2 more farms, the Pauline Grumbine Farm and the Bruce and Laura Heilinger Farm. They are our latest protections. The one is a 174 acre crop farm, and the other is also a 100 acre crop farm. 100 acre farms are getting harder and harder to find. Most of them have divided up and sold off some to pay taxes or whatever. My grandfather, Harry, did that. When he needed tax money and was short, he would sell off an acre of land. So I know that goes way back, oh my goodness, to the 50s when I was a little girl. And I can tell you, I'm going to show you a chart actually, and I'm going to cover my face and hopefully you can see this. We are now at 19,452 acres preserved at the end of 2021 with 175 farms preserved. We plan on hitting our 20,000 acre this year and doing a big celebration. So here's my chart. If you can read that, I don't know, but you can see over the years how it has multiplied all the way back from 1992 up to over 19,000, almost 20,000 acres of farmland. The other thing I have to show you is a map of the farmland preservation. My printer's not the best in the world, so I do apologize for this. But basically, I have marked here Route 422, so you can see about where 422 goes through the county. This northern end is a darker gray, and those are mountains. And the southern end has mountains as well. So you won't find preservation on the mountains. But if you can see the little aqua dots on there, those aqua dots are all preserved farmland. And then over here in this area, there are some darker navy blue almost lines, and those farms, we have 7 of them that are in the process of getting preserved. So one of those 7 will be our 20,000th acre. Now the white spots, you can see some white spots on there. There's some down in here, and there's quite a few in the north. Again, that is not the most productive soil, so they're lower on the chain, but down here you can see, and up here, they're all on the preservation list. They would like to be preserved. 33 farms are waiting to be preserved, so that's quite a good number. And it's expensive. At one time, the county commissioners did borrow money, and we're paying it back a little bit at a time each year in order to preserve a larger chunk. We also give roughly $75,000 a year to the program for maintenance, because the farms have to be inspected. They have to have a conservation plan, and we have people go out from our conservation district who actually inspect and make sure the farms are complying. There's also private donations that come in. Last year we had about $8,229 in private donations. Municipalities have been very generous, and last year they donated $97,400. Clean and Green, if somebody takes their farm, they get a tax break with Clean and Green, but if they sell the farm, then all the money they put into Clean and Green and save taxes has to get paid back. So usually a developer has to pay back the Clean and Green. Well, the county commissioners made a decision that we aren't going to take that money. We're going to donate that to Farmland Preservation. So in a way, the county's donating it, but it's not out of the general fund. It's from the Clean and Green. But that came to $45,764 last year. We also have some Act 13 funds from which the county gets money, and that's $42,500 there. I mentioned the $75,000 in the general fund. Now, every year the state comes up with a formula of how much they're going to match the dollars the local community provides. Well, last year it was almost 3 to 1, almost, not quite. But the state contributed $720,379 for a grand total of $989,273.52. So we have almost $1 million to preserve those 7 farms this year. So we're pretty excited about that. I'm thinking we came to the end of our talk, and I was going to actually this very day give a presentation to a group on farmland preservation and an update. But it's snowing outside my window right now. I'm sitting by the window because my electricity is out as well, and I had my camera charged, so I'm able to at least film this. And I can't go anywhere. I have an electric garage door opener. My garage door is down, so I can't get outside. but it's beautiful watching the snow come down and talking to you about farmland preservation. There's a lot of questions about all the development going on, and we got to stop it, we got to preserve farms. Well, you can't stop development because it is a constitutional right for someone who owns a property to sell it to who they want to. It's a willing buyer and a willing seller atmosphere. So what we want to do is make sure that we do everything we can to preserve those farms. Oh, and by the way, something else I wanted to point out on this map, I'm glad I dawdled a while. Here I have municipalities labeled somewhat, but here is South Annville. They get the prize for the most preserved farms. They're doing an outstanding job, and there's a lot of development going into South Annville too, hundreds of homes. And then I would say second, by looking at this map, would be South Lebanon. Now they're both in the south end below Route 422, and they both have just bunches of farms preserved, so kudos to them. They take their farm preservation very seriously. So I guess the bottom line is it's been a team effort here in Lebanon County. The commissioners can't do it all alone, but together we can. The private donations, sometimes even there's people who believe in preservation so much they will donate their land. Now they're smaller farms, maybe the 10-acre farms, but if they're next to a preserved farm, we accept that donation. And by the way, I mentioned earlier that we don't give what the land is actually valued. However, there are tax write-offs that can be had by the farmers or people who donate, or even if they're not getting the total value of their land. They just need to talk to their tax advisor. We're not allowed to give tax advice. So I think now I have really come to the end, and I want to say thank you for hanging in there. It's been a pretty long talk, one of those TED Talks almost, huh? And you learned all about farm preservation here in Lebanon County. So thank you for sticking with me. God bless you, and let's keep preserving that farmland. We have to keep up with all the development coming upon us so that we don't lose our farming right here on the soil in not only Lebanon County and Pennsylvania, but the United States of America. To import food, we don't have control over what kind of pesticides they use, and might not be good for us. So keep preserving that farm. Thanks.